Imagine standing outside on an ordinary day. The sky looks normal, the ground feels solid, the air feels the same as it always has. Then, without warning, Earth begins to grow. Not slowly, not over millions of years, but suddenly. The planet expands beneath your feet, the oceans shift, the continents stretch, the ground cracks, and gravity itself begins to change. At first, it might sound like a simple idea. A bigger Earth, more land, more oceans, more space for life. But if Earth suddenly doubled in size, it would not simply become a larger version of the world we know. It would become a very different planet. And for life on Earth, the change would be catastrophic. For this scenario, imagine Earth suddenly becomes twice as wide as it is today. Its diameter doubles. And because it is still made of roughly the same material, its mass would increase dramatically. A planet twice as wide would have about 8 times the volume, and if its density stayed similar, it would have about 8 times the mass. But gravity at the surface would not become 8 times stronger, because the surface would also be farther from the center. Instead, surface gravity would become roughly twice as strong. That means everything on Earth would feel much heavier. A person who weighs 80 kilograms today would feel more like 160 kilograms. Walking would become difficult. Running would become exhausting. Jumping would barely lift you from the ground. Every movement would require more energy. Your heart would have to work harder. Your muscles would struggle. Your bones and joints would be under far more pressure. For humans, simply standing could become tiring. Many animals would suffer even more. Large animals would be in danger first. Elephants, giraffes, horses, and other heavy creatures would suddenly feel twice as heavy. Their bones and muscles were not built for that kind of gravity. Flying animals would face an even greater problem. Birds, bats, and insects depend on lift, muscle power, and air movement to stay in the sky. With stronger gravity, flight would become much harder. Many species might not be able to fly at all. Even airplanes would be affected. A plane designed for today's Earth would need far more lift to take off. Engines would struggle. Runways would need to be longer. Fuel use would increase. Aviation as we know it could become almost impossible without completely new designs. But gravity would not be the only problem. The sudden expansion of Earth would tear the surface apart. The crust is not rubber. It cannot simply stretch smoothly into a larger sphere. If the planet beneath it expanded, the ground would crack on an unimaginable scale. Earthquakes would shake entire continents. Mountains could fracture. Valleys could split open. New fault lines would appear across the planet. Cities would not survive this kind of movement. Roads would break. Bridges would collapse. Pipelines would rupture. Buildings would crack or fall. The damage would not be local, it would be global. The entire surface of Earth would be forced to adjust to a new size. And deep below the surface, the pressure and heat would also change. A larger, heavier Earth would have a more intense interior. The movement of rock and heat beneath the crust could become far more violent. Volcanoes might erupt in many places. Magma could rise through new cracks. The planet could enter a period of extreme geological chaos. The oceans would also be thrown into disaster. If Earth suddenly expanded, ocean basins would change shape. Coastlines would shift. The seafloor could crack and rise. Water would be pulled by stronger gravity and disturbed by massive earthquakes. Tsunamis could cross entire oceans. Coastal cities would be among the most vulnerable places on Earth. Even if some land became higher or wider, the movement of the water would be violent and unpredictable. The planet would not calmly grow into a new shape. It would convulse. The atmosphere would change too. A larger and more massive Earth would hold on to gases more strongly. Over time, it could have a thicker atmosphere and higher air pressure. But if the change happened suddenly, the atmosphere would be thrown into motion. Winds could become extreme. Storm systems could change. Weather patterns would be disrupted across the globe. With stronger gravity, Air would be pulled closer to the surface. The pressure at sea level could increase. Breathing might feel different. Weather could become heavier, denser, and more powerful. The sky itself might not look exactly the same. And then there is the question of time. A larger Earth would not necessarily spin in the same way. If the planet suddenly expanded, its rotation could slow down, depending on how the mass moved outward. Days might become longer. A slower rotation would change winds, ocean currents, and the balance between day and night temperatures. The climate would shift. Some regions could become hotter, others could become colder. Storm patterns could become unfamiliar. The world map might still have names we recognize, but the planet would no longer behave like the Earth we know. Life would face pressure from every direction. Plants would have to survive stronger gravity, damaged soil, changed water systems, and altered weather. Trees might struggle to grow as tall. Moving water and nutrients through their trunks would become harder. Forests could change shape over time, with shorter, stronger plants having an advantage. Animals would also change if they survived. On a planet with stronger gravity, life would likely become lower, sturdier, and more compact. Tall, delicate bodies would be a disadvantage. Strong bones, powerful muscles, and a low center of gravity would matter more. But evolution takes time, and a sudden change would not give life much time to adapt. Most species would not evolve immediately. They would struggle. Many would disappear. Humans would face a world built against them. Our homes, vehicles, roads, power grids, farms, and hospitals are all designed for the Earth we have now. A sudden doubling in size would break that system. Food production would collapse in many regions. Transportation would become harder. Disaster response would be overwhelmed. Communication networks could fail. Energy systems could be damaged. Even if some people survived the first days, the world after that would be harsh. Every task would require more energy. Lifting objects would be harder. Building shelters would be harder. Growing food would be harder. Moving across long distances would be harder. And escaping Earth would become far more difficult. Today, rockets already need enormous energy to reach space. On a larger Earth with stronger gravity, reaching orbit would be much harder. Rockets would need more fuel, stronger engines, and more advanced designs. Space travel could become nearly impossible with current technology. Satellites might fall into new or unstable orbits. Launch systems would fail. Human access to space could be cut off. Earth would become not just a bigger home, but a deeper gravity well. From the surface, the universe would feel farther away. But perhaps the strangest part of this scenario is that a bigger Earth might sound like an advantage at first. More land, more resources, more room. But planets are not just empty containers. Their size controls gravity. Gravity shapes atmospheres. Atmospheres shape weather. Weather shapes life. And life depends on balance. Change the size of Earth, and you change almost everything connected to it. The world we know exists because Earth is almost exactly the kind of planet life needed. Not too small to lose its atmosphere. Not too large to crush its surface under stronger gravity. Not too close to the sun. Not too far away. A sudden doubling in size would break that balance. The ground beneath us would no longer be familiar. The air above us would no longer behave the same. The oceans would no longer rest in the same basins, and our bodies would no longer feel at home. If Earth suddenly doubled in size, it would not be a new paradise. It would be a global catastrophe, a heavier world, a fractured surface, a changed atmosphere, a harder sky, and a future where survival itself would become far more difficult. The Earth feels normal to us because we were made for it. But change the planet beneath our feet, even in one simple way, and everything else begins to change with it. Thank you for watching.